Okay, great. Hey, we're about 3 after. Let's get rolling. So I'm gonna, Nivendu, I'm gonna borrow hosts from you today if I can. We might be able to wrap up before the end of the hour. I'm not sure. Let's see how much there is to talk about. So welcome everyone to the Layer5 community meeting. We meet every week on Friday at this time. It's been at this time since we started meeting. So and actually I think it's been the same doc since we've started meeting. So if you go back to the very beginning, you might see some of the same names. You might see a lot of new names. And you'll notice things have progressed and changed, and we've gotten more and more participation. So there's about 20 of you on the call right now. Well, we've had some community meetings where we've had, gosh, I don't know, is it 38? Is that the record? Is it 40? I don't know, somewhere in there. The community is going to continue to grow. You all are doing some really interesting things. One of the interesting things that you're doing is open source, or is coding, and open source and coding go hand in hand. Open source and other things also go hand in hand. One of the things that goes hand in hand with open source here is learning. There's a lot of learning that goes on here. For sure, I get to learn all kinds of new things. And I expect some of you are as well, so that's good. Okay, so as we get going, go ahead and drop your name into the attendees list if you haven't already. It's nice to get representation. Also, if you've got a webcam, pop it on. Like, it's really nice to connect with you all. One of our traditions here is to explicitly connect with anyone who's new on this call or any of the calls that we have. The first time you join one of the calls, that's a fantastic opportunity to let people get to know you. And so to kick us off, I think we have 1 or 2 newcomers. Varun, you might be our winner today. Do you want to take a second? Take a second and introduce yourself and say hi. Nice, yeah, very good. I see your chat. If you have audio, say hi that way, but if you don't, keep the chat coming.
Hello, everyone.
We can hear you. Varun, hey. Varun, where are you from? What brings you into the community?
So I'm from India, and I was looking in CNCF landscape, and then I saw, then someone told me about that for learning CNCF, the good way is to, contribute to the community. So that's why I was looking for issues in the repo, and then I found some, so I'm just here.
Awesome. Yeah, Varun, nice to meet you. Did you, by chance, I don't know how many of you have all seen this, but this is something that, well, anyone on this call is welcome to help represent the projects that go on. Speaking of the CNCF, 2 of our projects are in the CNCF, and the other project, Nighthawk, that we work on is, well, it's really advanced in context of the CNCF. That project isn't a CNCF project yet. And then there's a bunch of other projects other than those 3 that we just mentioned, but 2 of them are listed here. And I had recently just submitted an update to add Rust and C++ as things, languages that are in focus for Meshery, as well as, like, I added DevOps on here, which I don't think we see listed on any of the other projects. And the reality is, in the Service Mesh Performance project, let's see where this takes us. Okay. In this project, one of the upcoming areas of need is that we're going to be running a lot of tests, a lot of benchmark tests. We're collaborating with a few engineers from Intel, a few engineers from Red Hat. And when HashiCorp shows up, we collaborate, but they've been busy. And then anyway, a bunch of folks, some from Cisco, some other places. We're going to need to be running some benchmark tests here soon. And really that calls upon the need for setting up Kubernetes, which doesn't have to be complex, but then using Meshery to run a litany of different types of performance tests. And so we'll be using the CNCF's labs. We'll be borrowing, well, I don't know, maybe 20, maybe 30 of their servers. So bare metal testing. And that one of the engineers from Intel has already signed up to help, but he's going to need help. So just by a random example, if someone's interested in helping there, please just message. Good way to reinforce some of your DevOps skills. Okay, back to things at hand. So Varun introduced, and one of the first topics that we have up is, well, it's a web-based community member forum. Who would like to speak to this?
I'll talk about it. Could you just go to the link, please?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically now this is the new community member form. So when everyone joins the community, we tell them to fill in a community member form to get access to all the community drives and everything that to the community drive and everything that it holds. So we've been using a Google form till now. So we recently switched over to a web-based form, which has an integromat automation, which parses the data into a webhook, and then that data goes into a Google Sheet and then into MailChimp. Yeah, so this is how it works. The one problem that we've been having with this is that we don't have validation for the fields. So if there's an incorrect, like it happens mostly for just emails. So if there's an incorrect format for the email, the integromat automation stops. I've added a basic validation for it. My PR is up for that, but I think there are better ways, but there are better approaches to validate fields, but I'm not sure how to do that.
What is this built on? Sorry.
So yeah, so this is like the site is built on Gatsby. We're using Formic to make the form.
Yeah. Yeah, to help explain that a little bit. So by raise of hand, or by like who all has used this form when you joined the community, and who all used the Google form when you joined the community? Varun, you might be the lucky winner in a couple of ways. Like, so Mario, you filled in a Google form, which really should have had like the same questions. The community felt like having a web-based form that's on the Layer5 site was a bit more classy and provide a little more control, a better experience about explaining maybe why we're asking for your profile photo. Like, what are we going to do with that? And trying to understand who you are and why you're here. So a lot of you had done Google form, which makes a lot of sense because some of you have been here for quite a while. And so that Google form's been deprecated, like Aditya has said. The Layer5 IO site, it's been contributed to by a little over a couple hundred people, and it's a static content site. It uses Gatsby as its framework. And this form, and so the Gatsby uses React as its framework. This form uses a Gatsby library, I guess is the right way of referring to it, called Formic, which just helps people create web-based forms a little more easily and tries to help address common considerations like form field validation, things like that. Or maybe if you have a multi-stepper form, like what are those steps? If you didn't fill out the field, like it would help prompt you. So that's the tech behind it, but there's a little bit more tech behind this. So in Aditya was, I'll go ahead and maybe fill a little bit of this in. and then, yeah, anyway, you get told about various resources and things that you can expect from the community and things that the community might expect from you. And when you complete the form, well, this is a static site. So there's no server that's running this site. These are just files, static HTML files, CSS files that are sitting out on GitHub pages, actually. Well, then, so is GitHub processing the form submission? No. There's any number of other ways that you could, process a form like this. And so the community here has chosen to use, well, like a low code automation engine or like workflow engine. And so there's an active scenario out here that the community managers have access to review and fix and update. A lot of you have been on the receiving end of this particular activity. So if you filled in the Google form, if you filled in your member form, then you will have been processed. You should have a small little process tattoo with your community member ID somewhere. And so I just clicked submit. And so I think I've just been recently processed, but this is what it looks like. There's just a webhook that fires and it goes through, making sure that people get permissions to the community drive and added to the right mailing list so that they have access to resources. And so Aditya and Zane and Nikhil and a bunch of other folks have been involved in all of what goes on here. So, any other questions or comments on that? We had long held off on too much automation because we didn't want to make it impersonal as people join. Like it's important to us that you're all here and understanding who you are and what you're here for and trying to get you engaged in the right way. And so we didn't want that to be too robotic. As the community has grown to a little over 2,000 people, it's been a ton of effort. And so some of that has just been automated over time because there's only so many maintainers, only so many community managers to go around. So speaking of community managers, after the community call today, there a few of you in the community have been identified and asked to put on a community manager hat in an official capacity. And so we'll have a training for those individuals just after this call. But some of the resources that they'll be going over and kind of familiarizing more with are some of the links that you see here. Does anyone want to speak to, like, I think these two items here are the newest two resources. Would anyone like to speak to one of these? Is Anita on? No. Debo Priya. So Meshmate Aditya might want to speak to it again.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, so even for the community handbook, we were using a Google Doc. It's a Google Doc that probably everyone receives when they join Slack. There's a message that comes with this Google Doc. So this has also been moved to the Layer5 website. This has been a group effort for quite a long time now. We're still in the works of refining what's written inside, but it's quite ready to give an overview of what the project is and about all its projects and where where all our repositories overview is, like where each project has its repositories and what languages they are written in, what frameworks they have. And they also have a couple of FAQs for there are some questions which are very common and everyone has in their heart. So the FAQs are like a good place to go to get most of these questions answered. Yeah. Yeah, that's probably it. And it actually consists of like the later 2 points that are here, like the repository overview and the community guide, even the newcomers guide, all of them are actually present in the community handbook as well. So it's like a good consolidation of everything.
Cool. Good. The community handbook is a new compilation of information that was in different locations. It's really yet to be reviewed by, well, I don't know how you say this. There were a number of native English speakers that helped create this. But so how do you, so I don't know. The English needs a healthy review. I guess it's just the way it's like, so there's going to be any number of defects in here, and it would be good to go over. One of the things too that I think is outlined in here, but really wasn't much discussed and needs probably a lot more thought, is there's an inherent kind of contributor ladder to the various roles that happen within the community and what's expected of them, and how to go about attaining such a role, what it means to sustain the role. And there's actually a number more roles than what we have listed. But anyway, so it's a great start to a handbook. And as you all peruse it, because again, it's a great resource, please point out any issues that you find. It's a little bit interesting. So we have a projects page. Okay, good. But then we have a repository overview. So this, okay, so this is just a simple index. And then the projects page really explains them. Okay, got it. All right, somebody has their hand raised. Mario.
Yeah, I was about to write. So I recall about the contributor ladder. I recall some point in time, Lee, you mentioned that instead of a ladder, it's more of a journey. Should that be rephrased?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, yeah, I think so. Because yeah, right. There's an implicit snooty hierarchy that I think people might interpret from there. It's probably not the. It's probably a nuanced.
Yeah,
notion.
We want to avoid like giving the image of a corporate environment and more of a There's always a hierarchy, but I think journey is more accurate. Yeah, like in there, it's journey. So it's just maybe to update the community handbook page.
That's a great suggestion.
So then how are these kind of feedback managed? So should I open an issue in the Layer5 repo?
Beautiful. Yeah, perfect. You're saying it faster than I can write it.
Okay,
Yeah,
I can add it, no problem.
That'll be a little bit of a topic of discussion for a few of the community managers kind of going through training later today. There's, I think this is of interest to many of you. And so maybe we'll take a quick look at kind of a graphical view of what that journey looks like. We generally don't this isn't published, and we generally don't. We occasionally show this once every few months, but like really trying to curate the community and curate the experience that people have. We try to. It takes a lot of time, but we try to pay attention to where people are at and whether or not they're getting fed, they're learning, they've found a foothold in the community, whether or not they've got the right resources going on. This attention to detail, like the difference between journey and ladder, I think in part why Meshery is the #1 sought after Linux Foundation internship. It's like, hey, the intern. We ask a ton of interns. Just ask Barak, Ashish, and others interns that are on the current interns that are on the call. There's no mercy, and as such, those individuals are being hardened, I think, fairly well. They're doing some impressive things at this point. So anyway, we take the internships really seriously, I guess is what I'm saying. And to be forthright, like if that's a topic for any of you about Lfx internships, there's an FAQ about like how to land one. And the gist of it is very simply engage consistently and significantly. Like we've got more internships open than we have maintainers or mentors to help people, take them through an internship. So like force our hand, the internships are available, force our hand, make it so much that you're here and being helpful, and we only want to reinforce what you're doing. Don't come, come and get it. Don't come and say, hey, I'm interested and I'd like it. Like, prove it, get involved in the project, be impactful, show that you're interested, show that you commune well with the community, and that you've found an area to call home. We'll make an internship around that. So, and there's a ton of places to call home. There's a ton of things going on. So that's just some insight as to how we like the word journey. This was more about resourcing the individual and helping them, kind of uplifting them and recognizing them as they go, and sort of as they go and then their responsibility increases, so too should their recognition and their uplifting of the activities that they do. And so too should their direct representation of Meshery, of Nighthawk, of S&P, of Layer5, like those two things, the individual and those two things reflect very well on one another. And what's good for one is good for the other. And so, yeah. Other comments before we move on? All right, good deal. The venue, do you want to talk about this next topic?
Yep, surely. So if you go to that link, you will see that CNCF offers quite a lot of online programs. So as Layer5 is a silver member of CNCF, and both Meshery and Service Mesh Performance are CNCF projects, we get access to quite a lot of these programs. One of which is a webinar, and the others include live events on CNCF Twitch channel. So a while back, we recorded a webinar on Meshery Service Manager, and it's about an hour long, and it is on YouTube. So after that, we haven't really looked into recording new webinars. So there is like a lot of open need, there's a lot of open area for people to come in and participate, and like we can decide on what topics we can present in these webinars, or maybe we can even host live sessions on Twitch. So yeah, like I just wanted to open up the floor for discussion on some of the topics that we could probably take a webinar on or take a live session on. Yeah, so if you have any such idea, or if you are interested in being part of such an event, feel free to reach out. Like if anyone has any topics or suggestions now, like feel free to mention it right away.
Very good. All right. Next topic. Who wants to take the Meshery V060 topic? A maintainer like Utkarsh, or someone who's been really focused on it, like Ashish or Barak or Husseina, or a combination of all of you, maybe. What does it mean that we've got a release candidate now? So good. Well, I'll tell you what it means. It means that we've been, well, actually one way of looking at this, if you go out to Meshery docs, some of it, most of it is hand curated information that the contributors here have written down and try to organize into flowing thought. That isn't always successful. Some of the documentation is auto-generated and automatically published. And really, that aspect of it, there's a couple of areas, some of the API docs and also the releases and the release notes. So when this release candidate one was merged 35 minutes ago or whatever it was, the same release notes that you see on GitHub happen here. And these are the changes from the delta between this version and this version. So if you want to ask yourself, well, what's different between V05 and V06? Well, one way of understanding that is you start here. And come down, to here. That's a lot of release notes. There's a number of you in the community who are who already have and are writing a release announcement as a collection of all of the new features that have come from .5 to .6. And so the release candidate notation here means that the maintainers and other contributors generally feel like we've achieved the mission of what .6 is, and that we have the P1 bugs, the egregious bugs well in hand, and that it's time to put out a build that could potentially qualify as a .6 release. So we will, as a community, make a bit of noise and tell a lot of folks about .6, V0.6 when it comes out. So we want to make sure that they have a quality experience. So the release candidate is a way of signaling that we're in a position where we're hardening the code. Not a lot of changes are going on, just bug fixes. We're landing the plane. The plane is descending right now. The runway isn't too far away. So it's been a long time coming. When did we do the .5 release? March, end of March, April, May, June, July. Holy smokes. It takes a long time to, well, there was a lot in the .6 release, by the way. There's a lot to talk about. Some fundamental architectural changes by like in the way in which Meshery manages service meshes. A lot of that has to do with pattern management. Service mesh patterns are a new concept, still emerging. As we go to do the .6 release, this page probably needs a little bit of update. I think this is still accurate, still under active development, but an emergent area, a really powerful area. One of the users earlier, Samir, he's been on any number of Meshery calls, and he was pointing out he was having some trouble provisioning Linkerd using Meshery, and the operations, the code that's being executed as he's provisioning Linkerd, well, is not using patterns. It's using sort of this Meshery, this MeshOps v1. MeshOps v2 is a pattern-based way of managing service meshes. And so we are close to flipping the flag, like being rid of MeshOps v1 and moving to MeshOps v2. So. Okay, if some of this is still new to some of you about service mesh patterns, so one way of comprehending this, grokking it, is through some effort that I think an email was sent out about recently. It was this notion that there'll be a service mesh patterns catalog where commonly used functions, features of a mesh can be plucked from a catalog and then deployed into people's environments. And so this is the sort of a draft of what that would look like. The mock-ups for what that looked like, I think that those went out in an email. Those are in a Google Slides you can go manipulate and make comment on. Alan had made a comment. I don't know if he's on the call. He had made a good comment. Okay, good. So that's the .6 release candidate. Some high level, these are like some of the highlights. I think there's an open pull request on the Layer5 IO site on the blog to announce this. There'll be a couple of blog posts that will announce .6. We've actually talked about this a lot, so I won't continue here. There's an open request for people who want to write about .6 features. There's an open issue that highlights where you can participate. Not only an open issue, but there's also an open Google Doc that identifies the various features and what needs written up. Zane, if you have a link to either the two of those, please do share in the doc or in chat. Anybody else have comments on v0.6? Questions? Part of the release were a couple of GitHub actions, okay? So artifacts that are outside of, outside of Meshry proper, outside of Meshry server. Yeah. So Aditya had a great question about the fact that the Meshry docs are now versioned. So this is a relatively new dropdown here. So just as soon as the actual v0.60 release is made, a snapshot of the docs should be taken, and that will be the permanent archive for v0.50. And what will be latest will represent v0.60. So, all right, well, that means, if that's about to go out the door, what does v0.70 look like? Did everyone that's on the call get an email like within the last couple of days that pointed to v0.70 roadmap and was soliciting some feedback? If there's anyone on the call that didn't get that email, please let us know so we know that we're using the right mailers. It's good to solicit everyone's input as we harden that roadmap. There's kind of two quick ways of reviewing what the community, what we collectively consider to be the upcoming roadmap. One is in Markdown here, but this only captures, I think, part of the picture. Really, the other way of looking at, understanding what's forthcoming and what would be a focus. There's this deck, Meshry architecture deck. Put a link to it out here. There's a roadmap section, slide 26 and 4th. This is a recap of v0.60, what's about to be released. And I think Piyush, are you on the call? Yeah, Piyush, did we hit exactly 40% code coverage for unit test here?
We are stuck at 33% right now.
We can't get off at 33%. Goal. Actual. Okay, so code quality isn't, it's something that needs to be planned for each of the components. This is what .6 looks like. This is what's proposed for .7. Some of these components start to get code coverage, like unit tests is what that is intended to represent. Separate from that, there's functional test coverage. So integration tests that involve multiple components. We want to start to set some goals and track that because we're, with the release of .6, v0.6, this particular project, Meshry project, will be over the hump toward a 1.0. So as we, look forward to a 1.0, we want to set some of those coverage goals. So this is 0.9, getting closer. Anybody have early feedback, feedback on V070? There will be another email that goes out soliciting feedback, and probably we'll set aside time on the weekly Meshery development call to go through more of this. There's a lot in there though, so something good to digest asynchronously. Ask some questions about, if you're on the call and you're looking to contribute to this project, which is one of a number of projects, but I encourage you to peruse the specs, comment on the specs, ask some questions, clarify some things, suggest some changes, that kind of a thing. Okay. As we take just a brief intermission here, well, actually, I think as we reach the end of our topics, it's actually a great time to say, there's a couple of you who are new on today's call, I think. So Varun got to introduce earlier. It's nice to meet Varun. But we might have a couple of others. Anybody else new on the call today? Love to hear from you, just to ask that you introduce yourself. So Junid and Maiko, have you gotten a chance to introduce? Say hi. Yes, you, Junid. Yes, you, Maiko. Oh, if your audio isn't working or you can't speak right now, just say hi in the chat. Introduce yourself. Right, anybody else new? Anyone else have topics for today? So, I've got one. So this is a community, not a Meshery. We kind of, Meshery is our biggest project. So that's the one we kind of, we let it, let it permeate a community meeting, because there's so much going on. Something that's relevant to all of you. And if you've done anything here, code or not, I think it's a great opportunity to be proud of. So try to find a link to this. So we've got, upcoming event, KubeCon, China, it's going on. One of the meshmates, meshmate Anita, she's giving a talk on how to adopt a service mesh, and she's talking about Meshery. So pretty cool. That's pretty awesome. We'll also have another talk about things that this community does inside of the technical advisory group for network. Let's find this. I think they changed they might have changed the link to it. We want to find it though, because you can review the slide deck in advance of it actually being announced. And I think you might be pleasantly surprised by what's in the deck. By the way, we should probably update this link. Another defect someone might want to take on. The deck is out there already. Go take a look at the service mesh working group. Ooh, that looks nice. That's good. Some of you all worked on publishing in an IEEE magazine. This talks a lot about meshery and service mesh performance. That's pretty cool. The other part that's pretty cool is this deep dive. I'll just show you one slide. You should go check out the rest of the slides, so I won't spoil it for you. Here's one slide that says there's some cross-cutting initiatives that get worked on inside of the CNCF Service Mesh Working Group. And if you recognize these logos, then you'll recognize that some of your work is being like prominently represented. All right, I'll put a link to the PDF as well. Well, what else for today? Does anybody have anything else? It's good. Some folks are volunteering to get some issues created. Fix some bugs. Got the meshery release of .6 impending. The nice thing about what's happening with the upcoming .7 release is that we're seeing spec files listed, design specs, which is great. So we're as a project, as a meshery project, it's maturing, and so too are its processes. That's really nice. Anybody have anything?
Just a question. From the Layer5 IO homepage, how would someone look at the contributor handbook? Like,
Yeah, it
there's
is
a lot of
not.
links.
Yeah, that's a great. Yeah, so if somebody's here, they generally would nav probably to this community section, but there's no direct link to the handbook itself.
Mhm.
And that's intentional because we haven't really gone through the handbook with a fine-tooth comb. But it's just as soon as we do very shortly, like part of that is what Mario was just doing. That's part of combing through it. It's like an open question. Should we have a link to the handbook in this mega menu, or are we out of, is like, or are we out of room? For sure, the handbook should have, there should be a link to the handbook on the community page, which
Maybe in the resources, once you click on see all newcomer, like in the bottom, there's a yellow, yep, that one. So you click there, and it's not found there, right? Or is it?
I don't see.
If I were visiting that page, I'd be interested in something like the handbook.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I can open up another issue for that.
That'd be great. Yeah, yeah, because this newcomers page, it is linked right here. So we do expect people to get to this one pretty prominently. And yeah, that centralized resource should be, prominently highlighted.
Actually, there's an issue already opened on that. We're still in like the works of designing a call out for the handbook. And since because I think it was like everyone thinks that the mega menu is too filled up to like put in another option there for handbook. It would probably like look really bad over there. So we are still designing a call out that would probably go on the resources page or on the community page.
And so by call out, for everyone's reference, I think this is an example of a call out, Aditya.
Yep. Like we could also do a button, but that would also like we wouldn't have to put in some thought where to place that button, right?
Yep. Yeah, please do. And Mario, if you have ideas as you go, like It might be that there needs to be a hyperlink here to see the handbook, or like, it probably doesn't hurt. Like if we're going to error on one side or the next, we should probably error on too many links to things rather than too few. It's all too easy for people to miss resources.
Yeah, because I think the email that gets sent, it includes the handbook, right? If I recall correctly.
That's a good question.
Yeah, it probably does, but I think it's still the Google Doc. It's not the.
Oh, okay, not the latest one. This one we're
not the
talking
latest
about.
one.
Okay, sounds good. And okay, so I opened an issue for the rephrasing. I just sent it in the chat. Just want to make sure I'm following the guidelines for opening issues. Yeah, it's in the chat in Zoom. So I'm just wondering if like any labels that should get added.
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a really good question. So when any of you go to create a new, and you're all welcome to create a new issue, suggest changes, identify problems, I would suggest, by the way, if you create an issue, just before spending 10 days working on the thing, like
make sure it's there's no issue open already.
Well, yeah, there's that, and
That's
also
one.
just make sure that that it's a desired, that people agree that it's a defect, or that that people agree that it's a desired change. Just but that doesn't mean you shouldn't open the issue. Like open the issue, but just but then and
before investing work on it or contributions to fixing it, right?
Right.
Like get a consensus of if it's seemed as relevant or important.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, yeah, exactly. Like, here's a great example is this will often confuse folks, or someone will come to the site and say, okay, this is interesting. These guys, this community works with these. Wait, what is this? What's this project? That's a defect. Hold on. And then, you know what? It's actually not. It's like, we work with so many, we didn't intend to like list them all. It's not intended to be complete. And so, so a lot of time, like we've had, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 people open issues on this.
Like some misalignment, but it's actually part of the UI, design. Like to have a half icon over there. Okay, I get you.
So that's a great example of like, just before people invest. But to your other question, Mario, sometimes a change or a suggestion falls neatly into a predefined, category, and then it's very helpful because you just fill in the blanks. But sometimes
I use a chore or task. Not sure if that's templates the best one for this kind of observations. The new issue template, sorry. But that's the one.
And seems as good as like a chore.
Sorry, just another question. Okay, let's talk about this first. Sorry. So community.
So here's an appropriate label. Like what type of chore is it, or what area does that chore fall into?
Okay.
And you're right. It's not necessarily a defect because it's not like it's misspelled. It's more like it's an enhancement or a change.
Right. Another question: should there be details about like renaming of the components or the React components and so on, or is that like totally out of the scope to mention?
No, that can be really good actually. So sometimes like that is the point of the issue, like you're actually saying. And so some of the maybe I wonder if this feature request we use templates, issue templates across all the repos, and they're generally consistent, but not always. Some of them will have a section that says implementation and also says like mockups and also says like acceptance criteria. And like, yep, to the end. So it's highly, yeah, highly encouraged to, you know, specify what that might be.
What about a screenshot in like, or is that too much? Like,
no, that's great. Yeah. As a matter of fact, like some of you all have gotten into the habit of doing a quick recording, video recording. Can anyone see the fact that I'm about to start recording? Is that, can you not tell?
Not me.
Okay. But yeah, dropping mockups or screenshots or recordings is great. Mario is touching on some great questions about issue triage. Is kind of another one. Right? If you look at, you know, some of the projects, the issues can go really far back. Least recently updated. If we sort by that, it's like, well, wow, looks like this character has got and this old one. And so the reason I bring this up is to say, hey, you know, it's occasionally appropriate to like bump this guy and say, are you done squatting on this? Or like, are you going to do something here? And one of the ways to sort of politely do that, but this is open for all of you, to do it politely, you could do something like, there's a few automations that we have around labels. It isn't always just about categorizing things. Sometimes these labels, they affect release notes. These labels will invoke a small automation, like you might just want to kindly remind this person that, so if you label it with issue remind, and all of you who've been invited to the GitHub org, like Mario, you're entitled to empowered to do this. And so here in a moment, I would expect there'll be a bot come up. There it goes. Hey, it's been a while. Why don't you get off your rump and do something about that? Oh, okay. So
that's neat.
Yeah. So there's a couple of those in there. There's a doc that is, well, there's a doc in the Google Drive called the GitHub process. And I don't think it goes into the level of detail about which labels do what things. So we might want to add that in there. You can actually figure out what you can kind of reverse engineer what labels do what things, because these are just automations that are within GitHub itself. So this label commenter. So if there's the Git police, the DCO, the sign off.
Hey, that's funny.
Any other comments, questions?
Yep, added the screenshot. Can you just take a quick look? Just a couple in there.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, screenshots go a long way. Like, nice. Yeah, we all like alongside this is the notion that there are a few other roles and responsibilities of those roles to document. So some of them can be seen when you're filling in the newcomer form. I think a few of them are called out. And so we should probably have those described.
Like different journeys?
Yeah, and we're right, exactly. Like, because your journey, an individual's journey might be focused in one area or on one role versus the next. And so like in part what Navendu was calling out earlier on the call was kind of falls into this between digital marketing and kind of community ambassador, which is to say, hey, there are these prominent venues hosted by the CNCF that are open to us for the projects that we do. And we're not using up all of our credits, or like more of that is open to us. And so yeah, that like that type of a thing falls into these roles. And so, but we don't describe those roles in the community handbook. And so we should, and then some people, yeah.
Maybe like some drop down where the visitor of the page can see those different descriptions. I don't know.
I think, yeah, in the handbook, or I'm sorry, on
Or
the,
in the newcomers. Yep.
yeah, I think this page that you were pointing out, right, I think it has a couple of them listed.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
but
That's right. But not all of them, right?
yeah.
Okay. No more questions, but so any actions on what we just talked about?
Yeah, actually, one is that inside of the GitHub process doc, it's probably the appropriate place to document the fact that these automations are available to us. Another probably issue to open is that only 3 of these roles are described. Or like, what is it, well, I guess this is a little bit, this isn't exactly calling out the roles, but somewhere in there, we should describe the fact that like people can become a community manager, they can be a community ambassador. What does that mean? What does it look like? What does it mean to say that you're interested in focus on DevOps, and how would you get involved in those? How do you look for those things? Yeah, so an open issue probably on further describing those in the handbook would be good. Yeah.
So open issue to describe missing roles from where is that? From the form, right? In what's the other page? This one.
Cool. All right, and Varun has a question, hey, why do we have a translation in the Meshri docs, but only for one language? And yeah, that's a great question. Like, hey, what's so special about Spanish anyway? I say that with the most offense aimed at Mario. Like, and that is,
yeah.
Yeah, there's a great question. Actually, it's just happenstance. It's just the notion that we've given over the last 3 years. We've participated in Mario, do you want to talk about this? Yeah.
Oh yeah, the open source.
Yeah, the CCOS.
Okay. Well, sure. Yeah, I can talk about it. Should I share my screen or?
Sure. Yeah. And just it just kind of gives it.
Aren't we out of time? Just wondering.
Yeah, actually, maybe just really quick answers like, hey, because Spanish-speaking people showed up and said, hey, it'd be nice to have a translation. I said, that'd be great. And so that's why okay. There's a Spanish translation, Varun. And so Varun, that does mean that there's prior art, your like prior example for building in support for other languages as well.
Sure. So can you guys see the screen? Hope
Mhm.
you can. Well, yeah, very quickly. So basically, there's this open source event. So it's like open source software contributors summit. It's made every year. We have some sponsors. So I think it's oriented for Latin America. Everywhere where people speak Spanish. Well, yeah, basically this yearly event. Actually, this is how I got to know of measuring. So they have different sessions. And I believe, yep, here's the measuring one that was held. I think they were covered more the documentation written in Jekyll, but also Cypress end-to-end testing or end-to-end functional testing. So I found that very interesting. Not sure, Lee, anything you want me to focus on about the translations, right?
Right. Yeah.
Well, yeah, basically there's some task. Should I show the GitHub?
Sure.
Okay, sounds good. So basically there's some docs folder. I believe this is where the measure docs lives in. And well, there should be some instructions for nope. Yep, this is all I know. Lee, sorry, but I just know, yeah, there's there's certain workflows to contribute in translations, but that's all. Anything you'd like to add?
Yeah. I don't know that. Yeah, that's a great point. Like that's another good issue to raise is that I don't think that there's any explicit document guides written as to how to provide translation in any language. The theme that we're using
Here. Yeah, sorry, the theme. Go ahead. Docs Jekyll, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't have multi-language built in as a framework. There's been a couple of plugins that people have looked at to help with that. Yeah, I think it's just, if it's a topic of interest to folks, I could please raise it up on the Discuss forum or in an issue or in Slack. And like those translations are certainly welcome. Yeah, Mandarin as a translation is a great suggestion from Navendu. There's a number of Chinese speaking folks that are using or looking at Meshery. It's helpful. I also say this, that like, it's one of those things where, it's the translated language will always perpetually be out of date. It's just the more content, and it's kind of like docs, like the more docs you have, the more out of date they are, just as a, everyone has the best intentions and then, but yeah. There's some prior art to look at in terms of potentially using a framework for those translations. Right now, what's happening is that there's mostly just a copy stored separately. Like it is fairly a simple and straightforward way of doing it. And that would probably suffice to continue in the existing path. Cool. Okay. Well, hey, we're over time. It's been nice to see you all. Some of you will see here in just a bit for some community manager training. Otherwise, go work off that turkey, I guess, at least for those that stuff their faces over Thanksgiving. So, nice to see you all. Catch you soon. See you in Slack.
All right. Thanks all.
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.